Wow, that's loud. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I hope that everybody is enjoying themselves today. This is my first London's Calling, and I'm having a blast. So first, real quick, what I wanted to do was thank our sponsors for all the hard work that they've done, the organizers, but most importantly, I would like to thank you guys as the community. If it's not for you guys, this stuff doesn't happen. I recently, over the past 6 months, found this community, kind of changed my life. So I'm very happy to be here to speak with you guys. I've saved a little bit of time in this presentation, right? We have about 25 minutes, so I've saved a little bit of time for the benefits of the community so that you guys could also share some tips and tricks with other users, right? Instead of me just doing all the talking, you know, kind of what you guys come across from your experiences around integration. So today we're going to cover that topic. It's considered by many a very small piece of a much larger puzzle. However, in today's customer success driven mentality, data integration is an absolute must these days. It's a requirement, and those so-called puzzles will remain complete without any of that. Before we dive into that, probably a lot of you are probably asking, who the hell is this guy? For those of you I haven't had the joy of meeting yet, my name is Steve. As you can tell, I'm not from here. Been living in the Netherlands now for about 10 years, working for a company called Scribe Software. By a show of hands real quick, how many people have heard of Scribe before? Quite a few, great. Excellent. Like I said, I've been there for 8 years, and as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, my passion really has become this ecosystem in this community. So again, everything that it represents has changed my life, and I'm very thankful for that. Don't want to go any further without some special recognition about the content that I'm going to share with you guys today. This was not me, so I'd like to shout out to my colleagues, Nick Roulant, who is our senior pre-sales engineer, as well as our marketing guru, Raven McFarlane, for helping put together this content that we're going to talk about today. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, a solid data integration approach is integral to the success and growth of any business. We generally talk about integration as a whole and commonly refer to it as the integration lifecycle. And this lifecycle consists of about 5 major stages, starting obviously at the top, like any project, with the design phase. Then that kind of moves into the development phase, into the deployment phase. People kind of clinch themselves before getting to the next stage of the run stage, but then after that it comes the maintenance part, right, which typically tends to be the longest part of any life cycle. And really, how you manage each step really does set the stage and determines the success of your overall project. So very, very important to consider all pieces here. The next few slides kind of really address some helpful tips that our customers, our partners, have shared with us over the last 20 plus years of being in this space. Please keep in mind, a lot of these tips you guys might already be aware of. My hope is that when you guys leave today, you guys take at least a couple new tips with you for your next integration project. So as we move very quickly into the design phase, this is typically where the dreamers come to dream, right? Everybody has their own ideas how they want their integration to be designed. This is a great thing, but through experience, it should be managed properly. A lot of people want to include so many ideas in their initial design and scope that they quickly get bogged down. And it's very important to keep it simple, to start small, and then mature from there. Also important is to involve those that use the applications that you're going to integrate on a daily basis. By including them in the design process, what you're doing is you are instilling a trust that's very hard to get by showing them that they have a say in this integration. And we all know that obviously gaining trust is one of the toughest things to do. So the earlier you get it done, the better off you're going to be in the long run. Third piece here that you know, we've come to show as a really important tip is ask the experts. Now, these experts could be people that have an extensive knowledge of integration or the endpoint that you guys are integrating to. Could be a super user or as simple as a daily user of the applications that you're doing. The feedback that you're going to get from these type of people are kind of the quirky things that typically come up a little bit later on in the project based solely on the application that you're connecting to. You also want to make sure that in this process from a very early stage that your design has the support from at least one senior management team officer. So you want a high-level champion that can kind of be your cheerleader at the very top. And it's also very important to set layers of sign-offs, right? So before you guys move into the next phase, everybody's on the same page, right? Everybody is signed off on what's going to be done. As we move through the design into the development stage, 10 years ago, custom code was very, very popular. The thought process was, why buy it when I can build it ourselves, right? I have complete control. But over the last 10 years, the iPaaS market has exploded. So it's very important that you also consider this. And when you do that, you choose a tool that is very, very easy to work with. This is going to pay dividends when you get into the later stages of the life cycle. As I mentioned, the integration platform as a service, or iPaaS, which you guys might have heard of before, I'm sure you have. This is a very popular option these days. Again, approach your project where documentation is number one. Put yourself in a place where you are a backup. You are coming in possibly after the design phase. You don't know what this person has done. It's going to make your job that much harder. So from the very beginning, documentation is key. Make it clear, make it concise, keep it simple. This is one tip that a lot of people don't think of, but every time I ask and we talk about this part of the life cycle, is having a master guide that lists all of your user credentials, right, of all the systems that you need to access during the integration process. Because nothing slows your progress than having to go reset a password or look for a URL that you need to access, right? So having a master list saves you a lot of time. Again, we're keeping these simple. There's only a few. There's a lot more, but we'll open this up here pretty soon. As we move through development, we get into the deploy stage. This is a chance to kind of take a little bit of a breath, right? 2 hard parts have been completed. This is a chance for you to kind of catch up. You have some time here. There's ways to do that. One of the most important ways of getting around this is to reuse some of the maps that you used in your earlier solutions. Might not be complete, but at least you have a starting point. A lot of iPaaSes have starter packs. They have templates that you can use. Utilize them, because that's going to save you time in the long run, and it's going to allow you to deliver your project much faster. The third thing that I wanted to cover here, and I'm sure this is probably the most common one, is around testing. You can never do enough testing, right? But typically, at the end of the deployment stage, you are coming up against your deadline to go live. So there's not a lot of time always to do testing. But the important thing here is to also include those end users that we talked about in the design phase. It's as simple as buying them lunch, bringing them into the room, have a quick bug bash, see if there's something that just does not work. These are the guys that are going to be using the applications on a daily basis. If they can break something, they will break it. You feed them, you keep them happy, right? The big thing here is you're also building on that trust that you established in the design phase. So again, you have that support continuously through the project lifecycle. Okay, now congratulations, right? We've made it to the go live date. It's very important to celebrate the small victories, right? But it's also very important to remain very humble, because with data integration, it's not a question of if something is going to break, it's a question of when, right? It's common sense, right? But a lot of people don't think that way. What customers, what partners, depends on what you are, have considered is to have a command center, right? A console where they can monitor all of their ongoing solutions from one screen. That allows you to monitor the health and also react to certain issues that might pose themselves, right? The last thing you want is somebody waiting at your desk on Monday morning before you had your coffee to let you know. So having a nice command center, a nice notification tool that allows you insight as to if and when things are going to break, very important. Also, another important step that kind of ties into the last one is having a clear set of roles and responsibilities for people to have when something breaks. Again, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. The last thing somebody wants to do is when it breaks, have to wonder or ask, who's going to fix this for me, right? So having that be very clear from the get-go is going to make things much smoother. And I mentioned the fifth and final stage. This is the maintenance phase. So you're past the go live, but this is by far the most challenging piece of the puzzle. Businesses' needs, they change on a daily basis. Hell, they might even change on an hourly basis. Your integration approach needs to have been prepared to adapt to these changes, right? What a lot of people don't understand is that 90% of your overall cost comes in this phase alone. 90%. Maintaining APIs, adding new endpoints to your integration. This all comes down into this area. It's very important, as I mentioned, choosing a solution that's approachable and digestible to your team. It's going to allow others to adopt it much more easily. Take advantage of any trainings that are available on the iPass, on the applications that you use. Knowledge is power, right? And it's only going to make your project run a lot smoother in this maintenance phase. The common scenario here when you get into maintenance is the person who originally designed, deployed, and built the integrations might not be available when something bad happens, or when you guys want to add another endpoint to your integration as you're maturing it. They might be on another project. They might not even work for your company anymore. So again, the documentation that you guys maintain, this is where it pays off, because it should be very easy for somebody to come in, completely understand what was done so they can address it, fix it, maintain it further. In a case where custom coding comes into play, how many of you guys are developers in here? A lot, right? How many of you guys have the same development strategy? Exactly, right? So if something breaks and that original developer is not available, you're going to have to bring another developer in. First, they're going to have to dissect what that person did. They're going to make fun of it. Then they're going to rebuild it the way they want to do it, right? And that takes time and that takes money, right? I'm not saying developers can't do this, because you can. You do it very well. But you should be focused on more important areas of your business, right, when it comes down to integration. So, with that being said, I have about 7 minutes left. I mentioned earlier, this is a community. We learn from everybody. These are just a small sample of tips and tricks. So, coming back to this slide, is there anybody in here that would like to share a very important tip or trick that they have learned at any phase here in the life cycle? Anybody? I'm going to pick on somebody if somebody doesn't volunteer. Cornell.
I have a question though.
Yes.
About training. Can you elaborate on that? Can you elaborate on the types of training you are referring to?
So let's break this down to, we're talking about an iPaaS, right? An integration platform as a service. Once you get in the maintenance stage, there are people that have been involved in the project for a long time.
You mean like admins or something?
Could be admins, could be consultants, could be integration experts, could be anybody. They might not be available to kind of mature the integration going forward. So you want to choose a tool that allows a new person to come into that role, get up to speed very quickly on the tool, what it does, how it works, so that they can immediately go in, look at the documentation. Hopefully that was set up very well, but in most cases it's not, and be able to pick up where that person left off. So most iPasses come with some sort of certification training. Custom coding does not. That's up here in a developer's head, in a very expensive developer's head, right? So any free trainings, any cheap trainings, I highly recommend that you take full advantage of them. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Perfect. So, Cornell, I'm glad that you volunteered.
But no problem.
You opened your mouth. So, Cornell, integration, right? I know integration might not be something that you focus on a lot, but you are a man of many talents. I know this for sure. Cornell, is there any tips and tricks that we didn't talk about here that you've experienced, some of your colleagues experienced, that you would like to share with the group?
Well, I was actually, the reason why I asked the question about training is because I wanted to point out that I think that knowledge is a lot of times in people's heads. So what you just mentioned about being able to do some kind of standardized training or certification, I kind of feel like that's a way forward that we've not yet experienced for a long time.
Sure.
Within the community, but also within the Salesforce platform, because I think there's still a lot of custom things going on. And actually, the thing you mentioned about doing centralized training or having good documentation around, I think it's very important for new people to get up and running with the platform. So that was actually going to be my addition if you didn't mention that.
Oh, well, good. Sergey, I know that you come across a lot of data integration challenges in the nonprofit world. How do you guys save time, save money? What tips have you learned at any stage? Most likely, probably the design phase is huge for you guys, right?
Yeah, so my suggestion to see how we utilize as less as possible IT infrastructure in nonprofit. Hopefully everything should run on Salesforce, but it's not always the case.
It's not a perfect world, right?
Keep it simple in most cases. I really like this part from your design phase, and start slowly, step by step. It's still in many cases people moving from Excel to Salesforce, and it takes time to understand and go through sophisticated integration platforms like Scribe, but it's a big potential because it's declarative again. Stick with at less code as possible because it's maintenance in the end costs. Yeah.
It's a big point, right? And keep in mind that this life cycle can take 2 to 3 years, right? So these first 4 steps can take a couple weeks, can take a couple months, a couple days. But the maintenance side, the adapt side, that is the biggest issue that you guys have to worry about. One last thing, right? There is another integration expert in the room. Hank, do you have anything that you want to add to this? Because you've been in this space for a long time, right? Highly respected. Do you have any tips that you want to share with anybody? That's right, yeah. Typical iPass speak, right?
Was this
Bam.
orchestrated?
This was orchestrated, yeah. Thanks. Anybody else want to share anything before? Yes.
So where I work, we have an integration with Salesforce.
Sure.
And this means that essentially a consumer's behavioural data will get stored in Salesforce. But something we come up against quite a lot is an unanticipated cost from Salesforce because of storage fees.
Sure.
So I was wondering if you've got any tips around that, really, about how we can perhaps advise or maybe.
Well, I have 3 minutes. It's impossible to answer that question in 3 minutes. Can we kind of chat about this afterwards? I will add this also after the session is done. We'll add this question in there and the answer to that. Is that fair? It's a really, really good question. Have you ever had any issues with API hits as well? Yeah, okay. Perfect. There's also some great tips around that as well. Leveraging a lot of the features and functionalities that come with an iPass, bulk utilizing all that stuff really, really helps out. Also increases performance. So big thing.
Sorry, but this would be part of the design phase, right? That you are aware of the additional cost and not be surprised by new stuff, right?
You would hope, but typically those unanticipated costs don't really come until after the run stage, right? So yeah, it's something that's good, that is saving somebody else the heartache and the headache, right, that you already experienced or that you continue to experience. So obviously I've referred to the integration platforms as a service quite a few times during this discussion. A lot of the tips that were discussed are covered in these options, particularly by Scribe. And really to recap, success comes from just a few things. Working with something that is approachable. And by approachable, I mean approachable in terms of ease of use. Keep that in mind. It has to be easy. If not, it's going to be a nightmare. So if you can focus on easy, that's great. Taking that no-coded direction now allows your developers to focus on more, or if not, the same amount of important things within their business. Approachable in terms of price point. Small businesses, nonprofits, as well as enterprise and mid-market, they should all have the ability to integrate all of their business systems without busting their budgets. Keep that in mind. And obviously, in approachability, of course, being a company that's easy to work with. Find somebody that you enjoy working with. Everybody enjoys working with Salesforce, most of the times, right? But you see the benefits of working with a great company. Make sure you choose that very wisely. Allow those people to be your data integration experts so you can focus on more important things within your business. And with that, pretty much wraps it up. I hope you guys were able to come away with a few new tips to take with you. Before we leave, I think we're pretty much running out on questions. If you guys have some additional questions, I'll be out in the communal area, so we respect the people who are coming in here setting up for the next call or for the next presentation. My colleague Ozer at the back of the door has a badge scanner. We would love to find out who was interested, who came. Promise we're not going to spam you guys. We'll make sure that there's a value there if and when we do contact you. And again, these slides recording is going to be available after the session. So with that being said, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.